Creepy Hunting Encounter by Hot Dogger 2020. I once held a hunting lease in Middle Georgia. It was an abandoned hunting camp that hadn't been used in several years. I'm not superstitious at all, but this place was legitimately spooky. It was miles down an overgrown dirt road and completely surrounded by woods. It's probably the most secluded place I've ever been. I used to hunt there by myself a lot, and there was always this weird sense that I wasn't alone out there. There was a locked gate at the front of the property, but it was not uncommon for us to find the front door of the cabin open, even when the door was locked. That was pretty creepy, but that's not what this story is about. One evening I was hunting down in a small valley by a food plot we put lining a creek that bordered the property. From the minute I sat down, I had a weird feeling, like I wasn't in a safe place even though I was holding a .308 with ballistic tipped rounds. I didn't feel like I was the top predator out there. I didn't see any deer while I was sitting the stand, but the forest was abuzz with activity. Birds, squirrels, and other critters singing their normal evening symphony, and then all of the sudden, silence. Everything just stopped. It felt like everything in the woods were looking right at me. It was getting dark fast anyways, and I was extremely creeped out, so I packed up my gear and started the walk back up to the cabin. About 100 yards away, I had this feeling that something was coming up behind me. I spun around and pointed my rifle back down the path towards the food plot, and that's when I saw it. There was something standing in the middle of the path. It wasn't a person, but it didn't look like a deer or anything I've seen before. There was hardly any light to make out any features, but it almost looked like some kind of bipedal deer or something. It was just standing there, staring at me. I quickly made my way back to the cabin, packed up my stuff, and got out of there. I just let the lease run out. Never went back after that. Did I encounter a skinwalker, or was it something else? By Salad Goats. This experience is one I never shared with anyone besides my brother. When I was about 13 years old, I was living in rural BC. One night, I was in the hot tub on the deck outside, just watching the woods, taking in the silence. It was winter time, and we just recently had a snowfall that left around knee-height deep of snow. It was around 2 to 3 a.m., and out of nowhere this very large wolf, bigger than one I have ever seen by far, came out of the woods. I remember its coat being a shimmering silver, and its bright piercing green eyes. As this wolf was walking along the fence of our paddocks, it locked eyes with mine, and we just kind of stared at each other as he walked past me, both alone in the middle of the night, in the middle of nowhere. What happened next till this day instantly makes my spine shiver. As the wolf walked past, he walked towards our barn with our horses in it. It became darker as it entered the barn, but the other side of the barn still had a bright light, illuminating the outside that I could clearly see. This wolf, as it entered, halfway through it went from the shape of a wolf to a very large, broad-shouldered person. The horses didn't make a single sound, and this person that now stood roughly 7 feet tall rounded the corner towards the open field, but didn't emerge from the other side, and I never saw it again. My brother had his own encounter with this same wolf, I'm guessing. He told me that he woke up randomly one night from the feeling of being watched. He then looked out his window to see a very large wolf walking away from his window, so I'm guessing it was watching him sleep. This place we lived at was old native ground. Our barn was an old schoolhouse where the Catholic priest would put the native children and teach them lessons on Christ. It even had the old desk and chairs inside still. My brother and I both saw children's faces in the panes of glass from that barn and lights turning on randomly. We had closet doors slam repeatedly for minutes at a time, footsteps and feelings of being watched. In my room I saw glowing red eyes on the ceiling, and I hid under my covers till morning. Anyways, my main subject of this post, and what I'm more seeking answers for, is what did I encounter outside in the middle of the night? After I looked around myself, the closest thing I could find was skinwalkers or wendigos, but from what I read, these creatures have deformed features or things that make them uncanny or straight up horrific. What I saw, nothing struck me as abnormal about this wolf besides its massive size until it literally changed its entire form in front of me. I know this is a long read, Sorry, I'm not a great storyteller, and there's just so much that I experienced at this property that this just scratches the surface to everything. The wolf incident is just something I've never really been able to grasp and always wanted some kind of answer because it feels and sounds unbelievable. I also understand that the term skinwalker is Navajo lore and doesn't correlate with BC tribes, but this is just a representation of what I saw with the closest accuracy. Father is traumatized by Straight Edge 805. My father works as a security guard for a ranch in Mexico. He lives in Oaxaca and sadly I'm here in the US. Hopefully one day I can provide for them. Well, 2 hours ago my mother called me all shocked up and I asked what happened. My mom said it's better if my dad told me what happened. So he did. He said while he and other three guys were guarding the ranch of a friend, something came into the ranch. First off, the ranch is big, so all four men had a pickup truck. They all parked the car in all the corners in the ranch like a square. My father was on the south side, where the animals are kept in. He said around 2 a.m. he woke up to the dogs barking and animals acting up. He stood up and listened. When out of nowhere the back of the truck started to move, and then he saw it this giant creature with horns on his head and a body as a bear. He said all he can see was the red glowing eyes. The beast moved all around the truck, staring at my father. My father had a shotgun behind his head, but he was frozen in fear. The beast stood in front of the truck, grabbing the bumper and shaking the truck. My father said he thought the beast was going to flip the car over, but it didn't. It just scared my father and ran off to the empty fields. After he saw it was far away, he drove off to the house and called his friend and told him. I quit. He said the beast looked like it had a bear-like body with horns and spiked-up ears. He could see white or gray hair on the chest, and when it ran off like an animal. He thinks it was a werewolf or wendigo. What do you all think he saw? A few different experiences. By Archerson 507. Myself and my family have had various weird, creepy things happen over the years, so a few different stories here. This first one has been shared a few times on Reddit under different older accounts on no sleep and humanoid encounters. Anyway, first story, June 1994, Appomattox, Virginia. I'm pretty sure it was a Thursday. I know school was out for the summer. I was watching I Dream of Jeannie on Nick at night. We were poor and didn't have an air conditioner, so we kept the back door open with the screen door closed. I went to the kitchen to get a drink, and you know that feeling you get when someone is staring at you? I felt that coming from the porch. So I look over at the screen door, about 3.5 to 4 feet tall, all white with big black eyes, this thing staring at me. I freaked out and ran to tell my mom. She seemed sure that I was dreaming, but I definitely wasn't. Later that night I had gone to bed. I don't remember why, but for some reason I didn't have a blanket on my bed that night. So I'm laying there, facing the wall, when I feel the staring again. I roll over, and this thing is standing beside my bed. Keeping in mind that the back door was open and my mom was in her bedroom, it could have easily just walked through the house to my room. Anyway, I screamed and jumped over the end of the bed and ran to my mom. Refused to go back into my room that night. Last time I saw that particular thing. But April 2013, Lynchburg, Virginia. So I had just turned 30, and I was working 12-hour overnight shifts at a factory. I woke up on Wednesday afternoon, the first day of my work week. I went downstairs and started making sandwiches and gathering fruit and granola bars to take to work with me. We had a sliding glass door for a back door with giant blinds. Two of the slats were missing. So I felt staring. I looked towards the black door and saw this thing about 7 feet tall, all black with pointy ears and no other discernible facial features. I blue screened for about 30 seconds. Then it shook its head and walked away. I finally ran into the living room and hid for a while. September 1993 to February 1999. Appomattox. We moved into that house in September 1993. One afternoon, about a week after we moved in, me and my brother both saw a bright red Mustang pull into the driveway, and a man in a black suit got out. We looked at each other. Then the man and the car were gone. On another weekend afternoon, the two of us were playing around with a small tape recorder. My brother was making creepy faces and not saying anything, and I was asking him to stop. So we played the tape back. My voice sounded muffled and in the background. The main thing we heard was what sounded like an old lady laughing. My brother broke the tape recorder. A few weeks later, our older brother, 22 at the time, I was 12 and the other brother was 17, brought some beers over while Mom and Bill were out for the day. We told Shane about what had happened, and he, the eternal atheist, just laughed. Then something grabbed his arm, hard, and we several small bite marks, like mouse-sized, appear on his arm. Whatever it was let go, and his arm was bleeding, with the small teeth marks still there. One night during a snowstorm, the power went out. Me and my brother lived at opposite ends of a hall, with the bathroom in between us, right by my room. Mom was in the living room reading by an oil lamp, and she heard the bathroom light flicking on and off. She called out that the power was out, but the flicking continued. She checked on my brother, then me, and we were both in our rooms. The flicking never stopped. She went into her room for the rest of the night. November 2000. Appomattox again. One of my friends was legit rich, and his family had roughly 200 acres of land and forest behind his house. Our drama team had just won regionals, and my friend was celebrating by having a huge campout on his property. At about 2 a.m., he asks who wants to see the witch's grave. So a small group of us, about 4 to 5 guys, jumped on four-wheelers and headed to the end of the property to see this witch's graveyard. We stopped on one end of the field and walked over to the small cemetery. Even with some of my prior experiences, I was always the skeptic, so I took the lead. My friend and his cousin started yelling for me to stop right there as I was entering the cemetery. They shined a flashlight right around my neck area. There was a piece of barbed wire hanging right at neck height across the entrance, and I was about 2 inches away from it. They insisted that it hadn't been there when they were out earlier in the day. So we ducked under the barbed wire, and Dustin showed us the witch's grave, a spot between two trees where there was no grass. I walked over to it, stood on it, jumped up and down, and said, "Come get me." Nothing. So we started walking back towards the four-wheelers. As we were walking across the field, a person appeared in the middle of our group, walking in the direction of the cemetery. It looked like a woman in a black cloak. It walked up to Emily, the only girl in the group. It put its hand on her chest, and it came out her back. She screamed the most unearthly scream I had ever heard, and Dustin yelled for us to get to the dam. So we ran for the dam and stayed there for about a half hour before heading back to the campsite. I spoke to Emily about this recently, and just thought of it scares the hell out of her, and she refuses to talk about it. I've got more, but I think that's enough for now.